Okay, I'm at the Comis Mount Murray Hotel and I'm chatting to one of the residents who's familiar to the island, and you've come over on a short break. Your name is Gig?
Gilbert Jackson. They call me Gig.
Gig.
I've been coming since I was 18. I'm now 87.
Gosh, blimey. Well, I'm not going to do the maths. I can't even subtract.
70 years. I've been coming for 70 years on a motorbike, and I'm still coming on a motorbike this year.
Well, that's excellent, and I'm sure you've got a lot of experiences that you're going to share with us about your visits to the Isle of Man. And just to cover the basics first, really, where are you living at the moment?
We live in Conway in North Wales, so we've been living there for 45 years.
And this particular break at Mount Murray, what have you been up to this last week? I see you've got some family over.
Oh, it's just that, I wanted to show them the island and what have you. My son's been coming since he was young, and we decided to come back. We came here last year with the scenic car tours and thoroughly enjoyed it at the Commies, so we've come back.
So tell me, let's turn the clock back. Let's go back all those years. So we must be around the 1950s, I think, if I do my maths. Can you recall which year you came and how you got here and what brought you along to the island?
Well, always been keen on motorbikes. I had first motorbike when I was 15. When I was 16, I managed to get a licence, and we came across with a few guys for the TT, and we've been coming ever since. So a bit hairy in those days on the crossings. We used to come from Liverpool, and they used to put your bike on with a crane if the tide was out, on a pallet with three other bikes, and if the tide was up, you'd wheel your bike up a narrow ramp, which is about 3 foot wide, and tie your bike wherever you could, on the railings, on the deck.
So as a youngster, this would have been a big thing, and you would have been following the motorcycling on the Isle of Man via the TT and events and so forth. How did you get to know about the motorcycling here?
Well, if you're a motorcyclist, everybody knows about the TT from very early age. And of course, Jeff Duke was very famous, and he's the guy we came across to see, so mainly. And of course, you've got Jeff Duke and Bob McIntyre and all the other famous guys. And that's the reason we came across.
And those motorcyclists, those racers, they wouldn't just be competing on the Isle of Man, would they?
Yeah, well, Jeff Duke, he was riding a Norton in those days, and then he moved over went to join with Gilbert, and Bob McIntyre and him were very keen competitors at the TT. Jeff Duke, it was announced that he'd got his 100 average round the course, only to be announced 10 minutes later that they made a mistake and it was 99 point something, and he'd just missed it. And Bob McIntyre took the 100 miles an hour the following year, and unfortunately Bob McIntyre got killed at Hilton Park shortly after. But and then of course we had all the people like Rayam and all that lot, and Surtees, Bob McIntyre, Mike Aylward, Dickie Dale, Bill Swallow, all the famous guys, and we just followed them wherever they went.
So this became an annual event. You'd be making your way up from Conway. Was that your home then?
Cheshire at the time. We lived in Cheshire at the time, in Knutsford, before we moved to Conway.
So you'd make your way to Liverpool on the dock, and it wouldn't be how we know it as it is now, would it?
Certainly not. As I say, you went up a ramp if the tide was in, and you would put it on a pallet and craned it on if the tide was out, and then did your best to secure your bike on the rail. I remember one time we were going across and it was a bit rough, tied my bike on the rail and sat on a coil of rope to watch it all the way across in case it got damaged. So you couldn't do that today.
And tell me, what were the numbers like when you came to Douglas and you could see all the activity on the prom?
Not particularly busy. Of course, it got mixed up with the Wakes Weeks, with the Lancashire Wakes Weeks, the Scottish and Irish Wake Weeks. So it was just popular island with holidaymakers. not so much the TT. I don't think half the people didn't know the TT was on in those days.
I suppose that's because of television wouldn't be in everyone's home. And of course, people use the Isle of Man as a general holiday destination because we didn't have the continental.
For the Wakes Weeks, very big holiday. Of course, we used to come across for the girls that came on holiday on their own and had an enjoyable week. Also the TT. The loads of boarding houses which have now gone. We used to always stay at the Crow's Nest at the bottom of the lift. I don't know if the lift's still there in Douglas now. It used to take you up to the top of and if you were lucky, you got bed and breakfast at these boarding houses and small hotels, and the posh ones you got a lunch to take away.
So tell me, these are lovely days, lovely times to think about. What was your general day-to-day business? You'd be out on the bike in the morning. What would happen after that?
Well, the TT started at 10 o'clock, so you'd go and find a place on the course, which you changed, each time, and stay there. I remember staying at the Cragner Bar, and the guy let us go upstairs in one of the bedrooms, climb out of the window on the balcony, and paid him £2 to go on the balcony. Now, if you saw the Cragner Bar now, it's unbelievable. So it was not a big issue, the TT in those days, so only with motorbikers.
So tell me, what was the condition of the course in those days, the road surface and what have you?
Sorry?
The condition of the course.
It was a bit bumpy, but the roads were always good on the TT course. It was never bad. We always used to say, the roads are good over the TT, which we used to go around 2 or 3 times while we were here, because there was no speed limit, of course, so you could go over the mountain at maximum speed in those days. On my bike was about 85, 90 miles an hour.
So tell me, what were you riding in those days, and what kind of speeds were you getting up to?
Well, the first bike I brought over was a Douglas 600 inline twin, 1934-35. Maximum speed of that was probably about 65 miles an hour, if you were lucky, downhill with the wind behind you. And then I bought myself a Veloset, which I kept for a number of years. And my friends had BSAs, AGSs, Nortons, Triumphs, and I had a Veloset, which I kept for a number of years. Maximum speed, that bike was about 85 miles an hour.
So lads, you were in Cheshire. What were you doing for a living at the time, and how did you afford to come out here on holiday and have motorbikes? We're not that long after the war years, and it was quite austere.
Well, a motorbike in those days, it was quite reasonable. A brand new Veloset in those days was 85 quid. For the Douglas inline twin, I paid £8 for it. Kept it 3 years and sold it for £8. So they weren't expensive. What did I do? Well, I went to Regional College of Art until I was 20. And then I was supposed to go to National Service and I failed. So I carried on with my motorbikes and come to the TT.
So what was your career during your working life?
Well, I started my own business. I was an interior designer. I couldn't get a job and started a decorating business, which was successful over the years. And then I formed a very famous company called Muraspec, which is still going today, and softened wallpapers and manufactured wallpaper and textiles.
Oh gosh, I didn't realise I was in the company of such greatness. So that's lovely. So we've got an artistic eye, and we've got an eye for fast speed. So this was a year-on-year visit, I take it, and you'd managed to make sure that you had the TT off.
Oh, always. Yes, you couldn't miss the TT. Right from the early days. Even when I was at college, I hadn't got any money in those days. But, of course, the clothing in those days was ex-army stuff. You had a dispatch rider's cape or coat. Your boots were gas boots, which you put over your clothes they were tied under your knees, and your goggles were gas masks, which were a plastic mask which you bought in a pack, a dozen for about £1. And when they got scratched, you threw them away. So you didn't have the gear you had today. The TT riders only had leathers. They didn't have padding and protection like they have today. So it was all done on the cheap, really. But that's all there was.
And you saw the greats go around the track, and they'd be perhaps more skillful than the modern rider. Who caught your eye?
Who caught my eye? Oh, definitely Jeff Duke and Mike Hailwood, without a doubt. I got Mike Hailwood's signature. He was staying at the hotel, the famous hotel on the island. I can't remember what it's called now.
Could be the Castle Mona, maybe?
No, the one next door.
Oh, the Palace.
The Palace Hotel. And he was stood at the bar, and I recognised him, and we had a chat. And I had an Isle of Man pound note in my pocket, and I asked him to sign it. He signed my pound note, and I've still got it today.
But blimey, that's quite a memento. So this will be in the decade of the 60s and the 70s?
Yeah, it's late 60s, 70s, yes. Yes, it was 70s.
So you must have seen some change at that time with development and new buildings on the island?
Oh, yes. I mean, in those days, they didn't ride these Nortons and what have you with their leg down and putting the knees down. They used to stick like glue on them. They never moved on the bike. Today it's leg eared up and stand on the stand. It's all different. That's all changed. But of course the bikes they weren't that quick in those days. The Norton probably 150 miles an hour until they brought the Gileras, and then we're really talking. So
just in that period, we'll say go from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Just tell us what bikes you owned and what bikes you brought to the island.
My bikes when I was riding then, I had a Black Shadow, which used to come on. I had a Triumph Bluebird in those days. Nortons, of course, I had, and my last bike I came on was a modern Honda NC750. This year I'm coming on a Royal Enfield, the new one called the can't remember. A Royal Enfield Meter, which they've just come out, so I've only had it a couple of weeks, so I'll be bringing that one.
So tell me, out of the range of machines, which one is your favourite?
I suppose really the old bikes, really. The Norton was obviously a super bike. I had an ex-army bike as well in the 1950s, which I really loved and wished I'd never got rid of it. I've also got now, I've just bought myself, very, very lucky to get a copy of a paratrooper's bike of 1940 odd, the Pegasus bike with all the Pegasus badges on it, which I keep at home, which I wouldn't bring to the Isle of Man because it's too valuable. So quite keen. Still got a few motorbikes.
So tell me, we're on this magnificent run. Let's perhaps move into the 80s, and I guess you call it the Dunlop era.
Yeah, well, Michael Dunlop, of course, and Joey Dunlop, and I'm very unfortunate what happened, but of course, they really worked on Honda, and of course the Japanese motorbikes. I remember the Japanese coming to the island for the first time, and people sort of a bit sarky as they came round very slow with the Japanese rider on them. They clapped and cheered, and next year they showed us where to go, and everybody was absolutely amazed. So I've seen the big changes. Of course, all the single cylinders then had gone.
We'll just talk a bit about the outside the track activities. What was the social life like, in the evenings, and how lively was Douglas and the other towns?
Well, of course, Douglas was very busy with everybody went dancing, of course, to the Villa Marina. Edmundo Ross spent many, many, many years there, and very exciting, and it was a good night out. People didn't drink and drive motorbikes in those days, so we never got involved in drinking in pubs or anything like that. It was either ride your motorbike, get dressed, go dancing, and do your best to find yourself a girlfriend.
So I just love seeing the old footage on camera, and of course we've got the No Limits movie as well, which is a big favourite. I take it you've taken that in.
Well, that was the favourite in the cinema. We all used to go and watch George Formby every time we came, and that was a highlight. And then of course I used to bring my sons and my grandson. I always took them to the cinema to watch George Formby.
So you travelled to the island with your mates, and that's gradually evolved into now a family trip. So we've got the TT only a short distance away. What are your thoughts about that?
This year I'm not doing the TT because I've decided, of course we've not been going for 3 years, as you know. I've decided it was too busy the last time, but I go to the Southern 100 now. And I've always gone to the Southern 100 for many years, but I decided to do the Southern 100 and probably the Classic this time. I've already booked the Southern, of course, so I'm here a few weeks' time.
I've got my views about the Southern 100. What are yours? Why do you like it so much?
Well, the attraction is, of course, it doesn't start till 6:30 in the evening, 6 o'clock in the evening, so you've got all day to play with your motorbike. And it's a short circuit. They come round a lot more often, and it's exciting. And I think the riders enjoy it as well because it's different than the GT course.
So when you're at these events, I guess a favourite hobby will be just looking at the other bikes and talking to their owners.
Oh yeah, there's always that, of course. I mean, years ago, the prom used to be a line from one end to the other with the motorbikes. It doesn't happen so much now because I think they've put restrictions on it. But yeah, a lot of is looking at other people's motorbikes and chatting about them.
And tell me, have you ever found the holy grail of the motorbike? Is there any one particular model that's really caught your eye when you've been here?
Not really. I suppose the old Nortons, the Manx Nortons, bring tears to your eyes every time you see them, and of course the AJSs, the 7Rs, and then of course they had the Porcupine here one year, which was incredible, and you can still see the Porcupine at different shows on the island. So yeah, that's a very interesting bike, made by AGS, of course. Pity they never made it, but there's still one left.
And say when you're at home and you're relaxing, are you having a look at the TV and the motorcycling there, or you purely just enjoy watching it live, so to speak?
Not so much watching it when I go home. I ride. I've retired when I was 58, and I've been riding ever since. So my hobby every fine day is to take my motorbike out with the lads. So good riding in North Wales, plenty to see, and some nice, and it's very quiet in the week, so good place to ride.
Well, excellent. I mean, you're looking in great shape. I think you're an advocate for motorcycling and obviously some benefits, getting out and enjoying the fresh air and a bit of fellowship. And I'm sure you've got many years ahead. So hopefully we'll catch up again when you return back to the hotel.
Keeps you thinking riding a motorbike, because if you don't think, you get knocked off. So it keeps you going and keeps your attention.
Well, there you go. Those are the words of advice, purely on a road safety and longevity basis. But thank you so much for taking time, and we've got some memories in the can, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. Nice to speak to you, and keep coming.
Lovely.
Yeah, the interesting part when you got, which doesn't happen today, of course, that the first job you had to do was to call at the government building and buy yourself a driving licence. I think they were 2 and 6pence, and that lasted you 3 months. And of course, that was the early days when they still had birching on the island, and everybody behaved themselves, believing that if they were naughty, they'd get the birch on the railings.
So let's get this right. You've landed on the island. You've got your motorbike. Would you be able to ride your motorbike up to the office to get your licence?
Oh yes, you rode your motorbike. The first thing you had to do was go and get petrol, because they used to drain your tank in Liverpool. So you came on the boat with no petrol, just enough to get you to a garage. You got your petrol, then you went and bought your £half-a-crown licence to ride the motorbike. And the police were quite keen in those days. They'd stop a lot of motorcyclists to make sure they'd bought themselves a driving licence.
So this would be like a certificate, wouldn't it, or a little book?
No, it was a piece of paper, actually, with a government stamp on it, just to say that you were a qualified rider.
Well, there you have that one. I never knew that.
Yeah, no,
I can't imagine our civil servants being able to cope with anything like that task.
Nowadays. Well, let's say there weren't the numbers in those days, but it carried on for a number of years, the driving licence. So, yeah, it was one of those things, and I don't think there was anything else. Oh, one thing we've always done, of course, is we've always visited Pete Murray, even from when he was on his motorcycle museum was on the mountain, and that's one of the favourite places to call. People still call it. We still call it Pete Murray's. Everybody's probably heard of Pete Murray's that lives on the island, and great guy, great collection. So,
Indeed, there's that commonality, isn't there? For even what can I say? The museum itself is unorthodox, I'd say, but there's something there for every enthusiast.
Oh, it's just full of motorbikes. It's an incredible collection, absolutely incredible. His father was collecting, and he's still collecting, still buying motorbikes. We've just been to see him yesterday, and he's bought even more motorbikes. So he's 82 now. He's catching up to me.
Excellent. Okay, that's lovely. A nice little interlude there. Thank you.